Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm really surprised to see how many people showed up for compliance. I thought it would be my staff that had to come in. So, but I'm here to explain a little more about the DNV instead of the Joint Commission and how it relates to actually help the healthcare technology professional with their career. I was exposed to the DNV about 5.5 years ago. So every time I was inspected before that was with the Joint Commission. The DNV does things a little bit differently. I thought they were harder, but what I realized is most of us are already 60% ISO compliant, and we just don't know it with the way that they do with their standards and the way that they inspect. So I see we've got a large crowd here today, and what this is going to be is going to be more interactive. I don't want to just lecture to you because it's understanding what your needs are in compliance versus what the DNV could do. Kelly Proctor was the COO. He is the COO of the DNV, and he was normally going to be here, but he had a conflict problem. They have a DNV show right now up in Reno. So the DNV has partnered with the College of Biomedical Equipment Technology, and in doing so, it's going to change some things. I'll explain to you how the DNV does their training now for people that want to get certified in compliance, and where the training is going to be in the future as far as compliance is and how it affects you in a positive way. So in addition to that, there's Mr. Jim Duran in the back there. He is the compliance officer for CVET on an educational level. And I'm here to show him of why we teach what we do at the College of Biomedical Equipment Technology. And so they could see how it operates here. He could see how it operates here from the service side of it and intertwine the two, because compliance is tough on the hospital side, but it's even tougher on the education side, as far as I'm concerned with what we have to do. So get to the next slide. I'm going to ask a random question. I left this slide blank on purpose. It says, what do we feel when thinking about inspections? What do you do when you find out the Joint Commission's coming in to inspect? If anyone wants to answer that, let me know. I mean, how do you feel? Does it make you nervous? Are you fearful that they might find something? Are you like, oh crap, you know, it's been 3 years already. What do we do? Because that used to be my feeling when they came. Not so much. I don't mind them inspecting, but they only come every 3 years, and you get everything in order 6 months before the inspection. After they're gone, it kind of fizzles out, and it's business as usual. However that's done. If you're doing things the right way, hopefully it stays that way. When I was first inspected with the DNV, I was in a hospital that was in shambles, and I was just honest with them. I said, look, you can find whatever you want. Here's what's going on. And to my surprise, they introduced me to their processes and said, we're not here to ding you, we're here to help. So what the DNV does is they walk alongside you as a coach, as a partner to help you with your compliances. What is that? Okay. All right. As you were saying, why DNV? It stands for Det Norske Veritas, and that's the Norwegian truth to safeguard life. They're not going to change your name. They've been around since the 18th centuries. They started in the shipping industry. They got into transportation, they're in the restaurant business, and they just recently got into the healthcare business, I'd say about 10 years ago. And their process was very rigorous to get improved. They are accredited by the CMMS, just as the Joint Commission is. So they have maybe 7 to 9% market share, but they're growing about 5 hospitals a month. And they have a large sales team. And they also have their internal problems that they're working out because of growth, you know, just like everything else. The main thing is as they grow that fast, they need to have compliance inspectors to be able to come to the hospitals and inspect to the level that they want. Yes?
Question. You say more hospitals are moving to DNV. Is it for cost reasons, or is it because the program is generally better?
Both. Both. You know, okay, we partnered up with the DNV, and the first thing I ask them is, what do I say when someone says Joint Commission or DNV? Why would I pick the DNV? And the Joint Commission is about life safety. They come in and they run a tracer from the time the patient comes in, let's say to the ER, to the time they were exposed. So usually what they do is they pull a piece of equipment that had something to do with that patient, and they say, go run the history report. We give them the history report, and that's that, if everything checks out. Of course, they both look for all the different equipment on it. But the DNV, they not only do the tracers, they also do facilities which we'll get to in a few minutes. So you'll see very specifically, there's 8 different areas of the hospital that we focus on. And not just to inspect, but to help those areas get certified. All right, so as we said, they're accredited by the CMS, and they use NICO standards, which is part of the ISO standardization. So they took the ISO standards, conformed to their own National Integrated Accreditation Standards. So when they teach you DNV compliance, you'll learn both. And what I'm going to show you a little bit, and I'm not going to get too much involved in it, is I'm going to show y'all how to look at your own standards. In the Joint Commission life, it's called EC standards, and the DNV is called SR standards. So the SR standards and how they comply with the NICO standards and the ISO standards. And it gets confusing at times, and our job is to make it simple. All right, so the other reason I'm here to teach about this class is the DNV has 3 CHOP classes. They have the CHOP B, which is your basic. It covers the physical environment and life safety. The physical environment is the facilities, it's your risk management, it's your EOC committee. It's all those areas that they cover. So you learn all about their rules, regulations, and compliances. The CHOP A is more advanced. It covers the same thing again, but it gets into more detail as far as how the chillers are repaired and just the hardware around the hospital, how the fire department inspects, how construction is handled. And then the CHOP E is more for the C-suite. They wanted to make it for everyone, but changed their mind and said, just keep it to the C-suite because it covers new structure, finance, budget, and leadership. And the C-suite, administrators usually don't like to go to a class. But what happens in the past is the administrator would take a CHOP B class and then fail the test. And then we would never hear from them again. So, and right now the pass ratio is about 50%, which is not that good. And that's one of the reasons that we align for them, is to get that pass ratio higher. And to be honest, I failed it twice. I didn't know it was open book the first time. Second time I did, I just didn't study correctly. And the third time, light came on. Hello, there's some seats right up here.
Sorry, our class was canceled.
Yeah. So, and then the C-suite will cover pretty much how to develop a hospital, build it, do new construction, their budgets, and everything that they go through. And you can take all 3 if you choose to, you know, if you're doing it for your own. Each course is 2 credit units, 2 CEUs, but that's something else we're going to look at because the CEUs are rated differently. So it's 24-hour class, and it should be 24 CEUs. So we're going to make that change in the transition in the future. These are the areas that the DNV covers: facilities, life management, safety management, security, hazard material, emergency management, then ours, medical equipment management, and utility management system. And on the bottom there, I put competition is mainly life safety done through a biomed tracer. And that's all that the biomed department really sees from the Joint Commission, where the DNV, they get into your entire business. I'll explain that later on. These are the ISO standards. And what the ISO standards does, it helps mitigate your risk and reduce them. All right, so it looks at the hospital looks at the risk because you have to take a look at your program and see what you can do to minimize the risk. Last thing we want to hear is a patient died on a piece of medical equipment that we repaired. No biomed ever wants to hear that. That we're consistent, we're always looking to improve, we're looking that the data is analyzed and that it's tangible, measured, and ensures corrective action plans. And that's what pretty much what the DNV is looking for. And this, by the way, is being recorded, so I believe you all have access to it if you want it later on. These are the features of the NICO standards: stable, infrequent change. The DNV inspects every year. All right, so it's not every 3rd year. They come in every year. 1 year is a light inspection, but they still get heavily involved. And the other year is a very comprehensive inspection where they go through everything, standards 1 through 7. Hello, y'all welcome to come up here and have a seat. So the benefit to the hospital is a sustainable system. Once you get used to doing compliance the way the DNV does it, it's just the way you do your work. I mean, you don't come out of compliance because you know what you have to do. You follow your policies and procedures. It's a gradual introduction to the staff, and you don't have to hire additional staff if you're switching from the Joint Commission to the DNV. They're there to help you. they give you more value and it costs less to be a member with the DNV overall. And the demeanor of the survey team is what really got to me and convinced me that they are on our side. If there is a problem, let's say you have one of the, what do you call it, the vents up top is not working correctly, you know, or 30 other ones are. They're not going to give you a type 1. They're going to say, let's help you fix that one and figure out why that one's not working. I'll go over some things. I did get one violation on an inspection I had with the DNV, but I didn't take offense to it because I learned and corrected it. It was on test equipment, which we'll get into in a little bit. But these are the SR codes. They align with the EC codes. The organization shall establish a medical equipment management system. That's your MEMP, your MEMP. What they do is they'll sit down with you on inspection. Let me see your management plan. And then they ask you something. Prove that in writing. Let me see the policy. Let me see this. You know, you address all issues related to the organization's initial service inspection, orientation. You get new equipment, what do? Let me see it. Show me proof of that. So everything that you say and do, just make sure you have it documented. The easiest way to explain it is, at home, you take out your trash at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You just write a procedure on how you take out your trash, who does it, and when it's picked up. And that's pretty much all you need to do on that. So that's what they're looking for, to keep it as simple as you can. And these get into the rest of it. The last one is medical recalls and alerts. What do you do with that? The only time they will give you what's equivalent to a type 1 is called non-conforming, and we have some other ones that they give you, is if it relates directly to patient safety. And you can get that on test equipment if you're not careful. All right. Alternative equipment management plan, they're okay with it, but you can't have an AEM with radiology devices, medical lasers, or new equipment and technology. And the other thing you have to make sure is that leadership is aware. All right, they got that in big red because they found AEM plans that were acceptable, but they never had it approved by leadership, therefore was out of compliance. And this just gets in a little history of the ISO 9000. I don't want to bore you with that stuff. Kelly designed the slide, and then I went in and re-edited it for him because he doesn't present too often to biomeds. So I wanted, and HTM professionals. So I wanted to kind of show him what I was looking for as an HTM professional to relate better with y'all. Pretty much, if you have good bones, you have a robust program when you're done. You start off with the good basic bones. You have all your policies and procedures that you have identified, and now you need to develop and grow it from there. Okay, and then the other thing they want to look at is organization knowledge, competence, and awareness. And this comes with what's in your MEMP plan. When they look at this, the ISO 9000, what I had a difficult time doing in school was being able to take this resource, ISO 7.1, and see which SR code it affects, because when they asked me that, I had to show that to them. And I don't expect you all to know that now. I don't even expect you to know when you first finish your Shop B class. But after you get done with the A and take a few tests, you'll have this down. All right. This is just getting into some other things here I'm not going to get into. All right. Control, monitoring, and measuring equipment is one of the major differences between the DNV, I put our competition, I should put the competition. So it's their competition so much. All right. And pretty much what they like to do is sit down with you and have you talk to them about your program. I know with the Joint Commission, a lot of times we were instructed, don't talk to the inspector, hide your staff. They don't need to find anything. And because they're afraid, they're trying to do a paradigm shift with the industry. They want to know that they're there as an ally, not as someone that's going to write tickets, you know, for the hospital to pay. So we're not perfect. And if we think we have a perfect shop, that's the best time that we're going to fail. You know, we're always looking to improve ourselves. All right. So the main thing they get into, this was a big hit they had with some hospitals, infant scales. With the weights on an infant scale is you can go through the process of getting them certified, getting them measured. But if you do it without gloves on, you'll get a non-conformity problem. Because that's how much the oils, little oils can make a difference on preemies in there when they have to be having, when they have to have medicine administered, if their weight's off just by half an ounce, it can be life threatening. So with the infant scales, they go through that, and then once they're done, this is the process. And this is where I took my hit, not for not having the process, but the question that was asked to me during an inspection was, what do I do if test equipment is out of compliance? It's never been out of compliance. Usually we get test equipment, at least in my experience, if it breaks, it broke before we did the PM. But what happens if they're inspecting a flute and they're trying to get it certified and it doesn't certify at the end of the year, and you use that as test equipment or safety analyzer on a critical device? What do you do for that? And I didn't have those answers. They wanted to know where my policy was. We didn't have a policy for that. And we do now. You know, we didn't before. So but we wrote it up the same day. And instead of it being like a type 1, they acknowledged that we had this deficiency, but they also acknowledged that we rectified. Hello, there's some seats up here. I know you're all the way in the front, but they'll just see the back of your head. But so anyways, the main thing is to have the traceability. And then when you get your certificates from the test equipment, a lot of times they'll look at that. They want to make sure that the final thing was the NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. That's where it ends. We were being inspected once, and the inspector goes, "Who inspects your equipment?" We gave him the name of our equipment inspector. They're like, "But who inspects them?" And then our CFO kind of went off on. He's like, "When does this end? And who inspects them?" And then, but the right answer was NIST. That's all he was looking for, you know. But that comes from just not understanding. And so I appreciated that he was on our side trying to get us points, but it didn't help if he was arguing with the inspector. Well, there's some seats up in the front if y'all want to sit down.
Yeah, sorry, the other session, somebody didn't show up. So
There were a lot of flights canceled yesterday and today, so I can move this one.
no, okay. Nobody wants to sit up front.
Imagine standing up. That's even harder than just playing. So anyway, so this is pretty much the understanding. When they see the test equipment, they want to see you have a process and a policy for it. So just be advised, if you're doing test equipment now and everything works, take a look at it again, make sure you have all the right language that's on the certificates. Sometimes you can have the calibration lab, the middle guy who comes in and inspects your equipment, and he don't put this certification on because he might have skipped the certificate or something. So you have to be very detailed when you address your paperwork. Communication, that's key. That's the #1 failure, I think, with any organization, internal, external, marriage. You know, so if you don't communicate effectively, things are going to happen. That's not right. So if you have a mistake, if you don't understand something, don't be afraid to take it up your chain of command, or don't be afraid to call the DNV. We had some questions we had to ask when I was doing the SR standards. You could have SR1 for more than one item on your equipment management plan. It's not this here falls under SR1. Sometimes SR2 and 3 apply to one of the things that you have on your policy improvement indicators. So that takes a little bit of understanding to get there, but once you do it, you'll understand it. Control of non-conforming processes, outputs, products, and services, all right? So what they're trying to do here, the whole purpose of the DNV is to make sure you eliminate all your risks as best as you can. You identify them. And once you identify them, you work on them, and that the leadership team signs off on. Again, then you have the analysis and evaluation. Does anyone want to take a shot? What document this is in the HTM department, the bottom shop? Anybody? Is the evaluation of the equipment management plan.
What's the question? Annual effectiveness.
The analysis and evaluation. This is the ISO standard of saying the equipment management plan, the evaluation of the equipment management plan. And what they want you to do is get in the habit of evaluating it every year. But to do even that, I try to do it every 3 months. For example, if you have your business plan written down, then they want to see that it's effective. So everybody should have a business plan, which is the MEMP of the biomed shop. That's our business plan on how we run our operations from the time that our techs get there to what our process is if we have a SMDA violation or just a piece of equipment that failed during surgery or something. What do we do? How do we measure it? This is where you look at your policy improvement indicator and you say, these are 3 areas or 1 area that we had a problem with. We didn't make the mark. For example, which biomed shop actually had 100% PM completions during COVID? I know we didn't. We tried, but when the equipment's in use all the time, you can't go in there and do a PM. But there is a form you fill out, and there is a process that we do. We send an email with a letter attached to it to the director of each department, stating these are the devices we weren't able to get, please contact us. So we're able to measure, and then we're able to see how often they did contact us. But if we didn't have that, and we didn't hit 100%, then we had a non-conformity issue. So as long as we have a plan of action in place, they're okay with that. You've identified the problem. Process, I don't know, accurate data. What do you mean? Let's see what's going on. This is not my laptop. Oh, I see what they did here. Okay. That was me just being ignorant with PowerPoint. So no process. These are the common nonconformities. All right. So no process for the tolerances certificates. We discussed that. These are the main non-conformities that they find. Reports are not accurate. So if you tell them you have a report that you completed all your TMs or you have a history of it, if they look at it and find out that you didn't document that you checked it with a certain test device, that's a nonconformity. What we ended up doing in our report is we had to call our programmer for our MMS or data management system and let them know not to close out a certain square until we had the test information in there. And I've never done it before I was with the DNV. We never wrote down what test equipment we used to do that device. The good thing is when we had if a piece of test equipment came to us that was a failure, we can go back now through our database, see what equipment that we checked on it, and then on critical care equipment, we have to do all the PMs over. On general equipment, you just have to do 10% a review on it. So, but as long as you do that, you're fine. If you don't do anything, it's a type 1 nonconformity. Anything that threatens a life or endangers a patient is what they will issue nonconformities on. But if you identified it, you're working through it, they'll respect that and just work with you. They'll identify it, let the hospital know, but it doesn't count as a negligent mark against the hospital or your department. And then failure to analyze the data that you have. So let's say you get one of those reports where you have to a recall, national alert recall, and you don't do anything with it. And now there's an SMDA, which is, someone got injured with it. That's failure to analyze the data that they gave. You didn't go look at your hospital data to see if you had those recalls. Give you this one now. Defective equipment not properly removed from service. That's happened in our hospital. We had defective equipment where they decided they still wanted to use it. And then it has a failure. Of course, it's our fault, but we have to be very political, diplomatic. We can't say anything out of the norm. So we just work with it professionally. And what we normally do is we send it to the manufacturer or third party to take a look at it, and they give us the report on it, and then we just report it to the EOC committee. And that's pretty much it. So are there any questions on this? The reason